My name is Raffaella Buschiazzo. I'm Director of Localization at Salesforce. At Salesforce, I lead a team of localization program managers. We are the go-to team for all Salesforce products and product content localization. I've been there 10 years, so I saw this big growth of Salesforce from 8,000 employees to 55,000, and it has been a very interesting journey. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, you are closer to me at least, maybe not closer to the audience in general, but
yeah, actually, I'm working for Amadeus, so I'm here in the area of Nice in France, and I work here already nearly 30 years, and the last 15 years on localization. Mainly call myself actually more a localization architect, as I work very closely together with the Amadeus application teams, providing solutions and software UI also to the travel industry. And that's a nice challenge.
Okay, so Henk and Graham, as I mentioned, we couldn't invite too many companies, so you are representing many other companies which cannot be around the table, otherwise it would take too long. So maybe you can introduce yourself as well. So Henk.
Yes, thank you, Dominique. Well, I'm wearing many hats now. So my name is Henk Boxma. I'm CEO of Rigi.io. My background is in product development. I've developed many products for different companies in large teams, and about 15 years I got involved, or longer, I got involved with software localization, and I was kind of intrigued by that because I saw that the number of strings was so low, but it caused so many issues within our localization team, and I found that, well, many people were struggling with it, so I decided to start my own company in 2008, and since then I'm helping companies to streamline their processes. And we also develop a cloud platform for software localization.
Okay, how about
I'm based in the Netherlands.
Yeah, in the Netherlands. And how about you, Graham?
Hello, my name is Graham Moller. So I'm the technology manager here at WhP. I've been with WhP for 25 years. I came from a background in technical documentation, notably SGML, SDML before that. So I support the internal teams, project managers, engineers, have a small engineering team here at WhP. And I think that's it for me.
Yeah, and dealing with many customers in different places. Okay, so let's jump into the topic. So software localization. So we are so maybe we can do maybe in the same order. Introduce what you are doing, what software localization, how it's working, and what you are doing in software localization. What type of software, what languages? Up to you. So Raffaella, if you want to start the.
So Salesforce is a CRM company, right? Customer relationship management software company. We offer all sorts of clouds from sales, service, marketing, analytics, and so on to our customers. We are our team is responsible basically for all the operations to localize Salesforce core app into 34 languages, and this means all the clouds and all the products across all clouds. So it's big, right? It's a huge production with different types of content, different types of formats. What we localize ranges from apps to product documentation through mobile apps, Trailhead, which is our learning platform, knowledge articles, customer communications. We cover all for product. The 34 languages that I mentioned include right to left Arabic and Hebrew for a limited number of features, and double byte languages like Chinese, Japanese, Korean. We as a company, we offer 3 levels of language support. So we have 17 fully supported languages, which means that we offer all localized, the admin part and the end user part, plus all help for these languages, all content. Then we have other 17 languages. They are called end user languages. We support only the customer facing part. And then we have the platform only languages for which Salesforce support the grammar. And so in this case, we don't localize, but we support the grammar for over 200 languages. We even support Tereo, right? Tereo grammar, the grammar of the Maori language. So there is a big variety of languages. That's a little bit in a nutshell what we do, and I'll talk later how we work in the company for localization.
Okay, Peter, how is it then with Amadeus?
Well, Amadeus, we are providing solutions, actually less selling software. We also sell some software to travel agencies, so the B2B software, which we sell under our brand. But most of the stuff where we sell, the translations I do, are actually under airline brands, hotel brands, or other bigger travel players, which is the bit of the specialty when we translate. It's more, we are more paid for the solution we provide, less for the usage of them sometimes. So we have different types of audience. So from the travel professional down to the traveler themselves. And well, I specialize on UI, and it's mainly, the story is mainly about telling the developers on how translators want to work and translators how developers work, so that those can work together. And that's basically my job.
Okay, Henk, with the customers you are supporting, what's the main type of content and the main challenges they face, or the languages or products?
Yes, well, we have an enormous range of variety. So we have very small companies, we have very large companies. Some have 2 languages, 2 target languages, others have over 70. Some have 100 strings, others have 250,000 strings. Some have almost daily updates, others do it yearly. Some have 1 project, others have hundreds. So many platforms and so many file formats. So it's quite a jungle out there, so to say. And it really depends on how the different companies work. So sometimes the developers, they are well aware of localization, and they know the rules, they know how to internationalize the software. In other cases, it's often underestimated. And as was just explained, so in many cases, I'm kind of, in between the localization department and the developers, and we have to basically train them or explain the developers what they should do in order to make the life of the localization department easier, which is often, yes, sorry?
Yeah, we'll come back on that later. So maybe focus on languages or stuff like that. Is it, you cover a lot of languages, I guess. Most of your customers. Any technologies? The technology? Do you see any trend in technologies or in getting cloud applications? Or
well, one of the challenges I think is what you see in software localization. I mean, in the past, and this is also something we'll get back later. It's about the context. So in the past, there were kind of file formats that kind of included the context. So you basically could provide information to the translators. But today, most applications are highly dynamic. And that is, I think, one of the challenges, because if the developers do not provide that kind of information to the translators, the translators will have lots of questions for the developers. But the range is enormous. So we have just 2 languages up to 70 or so.
How about you, Graham? I think it's a little bit the same. Is it? Do you see any trends in sorry, in content type, in applications, or in pressure on time or stuff like that?
As a translation provider, I have the same vision as Henk. We have lots of different file formats from different software development platforms, IDEs, frameworks. So we have raw native formats to handle, and also prepared format strings sent as Excel files. So we have a multiple inputs to translate, often into many languages, up to 40 languages, including double byte, left to right, right to left. So we're supporting our clients in a broad spectrum of formats and languages. The trend, I guess, is the turnaround times, the speeds, because we're our clients, I guess, the majority are now applying agile development processes. Essentially, our localization timelines are based on the sprints that our clients work with internally. Some have weekly, two-weekly, monthly sprints. So our localization schedules and delivery times are often locked to those sprint times.
Would you all agree that it's beyond the technology, where we have more and more type of content, but there's a commonality, which is a time pressure and this the agile methodology and the impact on localization? Is it something you would all agree on? Raffaella, is it something you can feel in with Salesforce?
Oh yeah, of course. But it's also, I think, up to localization managers to decide what makes sense, right? Where you want to put your effort and where you want to spend your money most. So we have, at Salesforce, we're part of every release. So every release gets localized, every major releases. And then, of course, for mobile, we localize bi-weekly, right? And we have different systems in place to be faster, to be more agile. And I think an important part that I've seen is that it's important that localization starts early on in the development cycle, in the product development cycle, so that you can really be part of the conversation early on, really at the design level. Reviewing design, flagging issues that otherwise you would see then into 34 languages, right? Concatenation should be blocked early on, let's face it, because otherwise it becomes a bug in 34 languages, and that's expensive and that takes time. So education, tooling, evangelization, reviewing of design, reviewing of UI strings. Are they localization friendly, those strings? And then are there comments for the translator, so that you can make the translation process faster if a translator knows that test is a noun and not a verb, and also that makes things faster during the in context testing, right, of that translation if it's caught early on. So yeah, agile, yes, but I think agile with brain also, right? Well thought agile, what makes sense.
Okay, I don't know if Peter disappeared. It seems that it did. So couldn't ask him the question. So let's go on while Peter might be joining again. Let's see if we can. Peter, you are there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
I thought you are left, so you should pay for your electricity bill from time to time.
Yeah, it looks about it. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about let's say agile.
The speed of development.
Yeah. Is it something which is accelerating?
Yeah, very much. Especially when you work in a company who works for so many different customers, and as mentioned, we are delivering solutions. So every solution has its own pace. To get everybody on on a rhythm so that it is translatable is very, very difficult. So as mentioned, as early as possible, as fast as possible, and of course, as they deploy as fast as possible, also with the quality we can provide. So in our context, in Amadeus at least, it's very much about speed, very, very much. So every trick to speed up is best. So that's why we work as close as possible with the development, because this is usually where we lose most of the time, and well, the time of translation, let's say, is rather faster. UI strings are short. You can translate them very quickly, but deploying a full-blown application takes time. So the time pressure comes especially from development, and this is where we try to save the most.
Okay, so that's a good transition to my next question. So how do you deal with development teams? So how do you work? Are you working with development teams, or are you just consuming the content they are generating, or how do you train or teach them about localization? How does it work?
Yeah, so that's actually I always try to get a training in, and I could recommend to put it, but unfortunately not. The most of the success we have is about consultancy. Also, we build up communities about best practice communities in the company, one around localization. So when people need it, they come to us and we consult them on the solution, guiding them so that it serves not only their need, but also the constraints we have in terms of localization. It is a bit difficult. Training also would be difficult because of turnover, turnover, internal turnover, and the turnover applications and the evolution of technology is just getting so fast that for me, actually, training is difficult because it gets passed by too quickly, although I would still like to have it. And the consulting part is getting very, very, very important. Like to have replies quickly understood, and kind of tell them what they need to know without really bit hiding the truth, because they will run into trouble, and not getting them the trouble before, but leading them slowly so that they understand how to solve the trouble they will receive. So I hope that will give a bit the answer of the way we work. Okay, probably not the only one who works like this.
How about you, Raffaella? So you've got developers which are mostly American, so which are not that much aware of languages, or you might have many foreigners as well. So how do we make sure that they are aware of localization, tricks?
Yeah, so we have developers all around the globe, right? What is great, I think that we are, again, since localization at Salesforce is not a service, but we are a player in the development cycle, we are in a great position to make a decision, right? So, for example, we give every new hire in our department, which is a tech and marketing and product department, so all the developers, they need to go through a training and a presentation about localization, what to do, what not to do in their first week at Salesforce. So they know at that point that for sure they will need to deal with localization, and they will need to deal well with localization because, you know, our revenue for international markets is pretty high. And so, you know, localization is not an afterthought. It needs to be done well, in time, quickly. And so, you know, they need to help us. So they are, from the first week, they go through this training. Then, of course, each of us in our team, we do constantly evangelization. We present constantly to new Scrum teams that we start working them. First thing we do is a presentation, a deck that they have with all what they need to do and what they should avoid. And then, of course, we have an internal site where they go, everybody, where we have localization best practices for writers, for designers, and for developers. So, and also we have Trailhead modules, which is again our learning platform, which is learning things in a fun and easy way. And we have modules for localization and how to create code and design for the global market. We do a lot, but again, it's never enough. We need to keep up, to continue to keep up.
Okay, I appreciate. So Henk and Graham, I believe that the ideal world that Peter and Raffaella described, I think we are far away from that in some instances with some customers. So sometimes developers are not that aware of localization. Do you agree on that? So can you?
Well, yes, I always tell developers from every assumption you make on localization is wrong, and which is usually the case. And so it's a lot about training, as Raffaella and Peter said. So make people aware, and also make them aware of the costs, because every mistake they make will get back like a boomerang to them. So they need to understand the localization process, and they should understand that it's not something done by another department that they're not related to, but they should understand that it's heavily interferes with their processes.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
what we do sorry, go ahead.
Raffaella. No, you.
No. I was here. Somebody is asking how we track compliance, right, for those guidelines. And as Henk was saying, basically we track in a way that we keep all the bugs that we find in every phase, and then we go back to the team and say, hey, this is percentage of the bugs that your team produced, and that's how we keep compliance, right? And it works, right? It works, okay. But it takes time. Yes. But, because, of course, it's our job. We know exactly what localization is, and that's our daily bread, but it's not everybody's daily bread, obviously. And so you need to enforce, to continue evangelizing all the time.
Yeah, indeed. Okay. I think the larger organizations they are localization aware, internationalization aware. So they produce file formats, and they use tools that generate string tables and context and information that helps the translators produce a quality translation within a short turnaround time. But we also experience smaller clients or medium-sized clients who send us file formats in a format that they believe the translators can exploit and use, that often hinder the actual process of translation and remove context from the source application, that essentially renders what we translate very difficult and very ambiguous. So we have this, because we are a service provider dealing with mature multinationals and also startups and everything in between. We get a very vast range of file formats, and often files that I would consider non-translatable at times. Yes.
May I confirm? Yeah. It's really true. Every single local internationalization framework I've seen, and I've seen quite a few of them, what they do, the first step is to separate the strings out of the application. And this is exactly makes it difficult to translate. So a sad story, which starts right at the beginning. So
I think you all mentioned something which word which can be considered as a good taxonomy for software localization. It's about its context. So and I think you all mentioned that. So Peter, how do you make sure that your translators and have the right context and know about the products and have a context on translation, because a couple of words, depending on the context, might translate completely differently.
Yeah, well, we try to privilege the efficient and the fastest first. We would like to do more, but currently what we mainly rely on is to have a glossary, at least the glossary. So basically what's good about a glossary is it's short, it's quickly to be reviewed, and is quickly to be translated, so we can exchange it often. So this is a good base, and everybody can review it quickly, so that we do not need, so we can face our customers before they complain, to give them something to review before they complain, so we can show it afterwards again to them. And the second is like the usual part is screenshots and question and answers. So more a pragmatic approach, mainly based on speed.
Raffaella, how about you?
Yes, so we again, we are very lucky. We have been working with the same vendor and same translators in country, teams of translators for 18 years. So they are basically subject matter experts of our products, which helps. This helps a lot, obviously. So for each major release of our main app, main clouds, what we do is we provide a glossary, and with the new terms, with the new feature names, and we get that immediately as soon as marketing approves them, so early on. So we can immediately jump into pre-translating content before even string freeze, localization freeze. And so then we have demos, product demos, overviews that we send to our translators that offer a view of the new features. And also the release notes, those help a lot, right, to understand what gets released. And our release notes, they are 600 pages, right? So it's a big release notes. And of course, we are there answering questions during all the process. Of course, translators, they catch issues, ambiguities, and so we are there to provide answers at every step of the process. And then after that, of course, during in-context testing or LQA, whatever you want to call it, so testing after translation is done, when the translations are uploaded in a test environment, we provide test cases, screenshots, and sometimes often for at least the main app, the main sandbox where they can go around and play following test cases.
Okay, Henk, I guess context for localization is something that resonates to you.
Yeah, I can talk hours about it, but I need to summarize it a bit. So the previous speakers, they mentioned glossary, and well, even if you have a glossary, you can still have big problems. And I remember a couple of months ago, there was a customer of mine who built a large HR application. And they had the word application in it, which is in HR software pretty key. But the translator translated it like software application. In fact, it meant job application. And as a result, what happened is that they had to do a complete review of their entire application in 50 languages, which was an enormous cost because this part was so key. So I think on context, it can help you to prevent those kind of issues. So ideally, if you have a new release of your software, ideally you would like to see for every key, you would like to see a preview. But then the question is, who's going to create those previews? Are you going to create screenshots of your application and somebody is manually connecting them? I mean, you will lose that information with the next update of your software if your keys change. So I think what should be done to provide context, it should be done during as part of the development process automatically. So there should be some way to connect automatically the new strings to previews, and that's basically what where I help my customers with to do. Then the other question here is, do translators really need to have the knowledge of the product? I mean, if you have in context or in-house translators, which is most larger companies have that, but our smaller customers do not have that. They rely on translation agencies and they not always have the same translators. So those translators, it would be very expensive if you have to train them each time on the product. So in those cases, they are helped a lot if they would simply filter the untranslated strings in their editor and they click one and they immediately see the preview where the text is highlighted. That would help them most. So this can help prevent a lot of issues. But I completely recognize what Raffaella and Peter just described. So, yes.
Okay, Graham, as an LSP, so you are facing plenty of different applications and plenty of different contexts. So how do you make sure that your translators are aware of the context of a customer?
There's no ideal solution. What we at WHP have found is probably the most optimal is a transfer session, what we call a knowledge transfer session, where the client records a WebEx in this kind of format, where they navigate through the software, either with the translators online who can ask questions during the initial startup of the project. If the product concerns a new concept, it's very important that maybe the product manager at the client side navigates through the software, through the interface to explain functionality and how the software functions. And those recorded sessions can be sent to the translators and kept as a source of reference during the actual translation cycle. So it avoids, it's not a means of communicating everything about the software. I think communication, written communication, contact with the client's localization manager is key. Communication in any relationship is key. So open communication channels, along with as much information upfront as possible to guide, if you like, the translators through the initial steps of translating the UI, the error messages, and everything that's to be displayed or published within the final software.
Okay, so now we are following up the process of the translators have had the right context. They have translated the content, so the content is delivered back. So how do you all ensure the linguistic validation or linguistic testing, whatever it's called in your organization? Peter, how do you do that? Because you have if I understand well, you've got another challenge, is because the software is not operated by yourself; it's operated by your customers, by the customers. Yeah. So you have a double layer, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. When we have well, the software we sell under our own brand, yeah, we have people who can review in the local market people, so they have an interest in that the product they sell has good quality. So there we have less an issue of finding people to review. It's more a question to get the time for them. So here we are more like Raffaella mentioned, more on a release-based cycle, so that they can preview the time to review and do it. But most of the translations we do are sold under the customer brand. So we need actually to ask our customers to review, because if we would do it, they would still think we use Google Translate, because that what's funny about translation is actually nobody agrees on what's the good translation. So kind of we let them review, but they do not like to spend too much time. And this is where, again, speed and to find the right balance in how much we send them to review, how much time we give them to review, because they are also busy, and how much time we then need to propagate their feedback throughout the application. And that's usually done, as mentioned before, more on glossaries, quick screenshots, whatever is fast is good for us. And then, of course, because quality in this manner, to reach the quality is, let's say, difficult. Our strategy behind this is then more to fix any issue then very, very quickly, deploy as fast as possible, and reintegrate as fast as possible if something is wrong. So missing review, faster fix.
Okay, Raffaella, is it linguistic testing?
Yes, so I already talked a little bit about how we do that, right? So same vendors, same people, they're involved, they review the translations, but in context, and through, again, through sandboxes when they're available, otherwise through screenshots, which is less ideal, but still worth it. And of course, we have We have product teams in country, right? For example, we have a product team in Japan, and they are very active, of course, and so they are very vocal. But also all our customers, when they find an issue, they report it, and so there is an investigation open that goes through different layers of support, and that support then, when they see that it's a translation issue, a localization issue, they assign it to our team, and we deal with it. So what does it mean? We open a bug, we see, we assign the priority of this bug, right? How important it is, how critical it is, and then either we fix it immediately or we fix it on the next release. Or sometimes we don't fix it. Sometimes there are legacy issues, right? Salesforce has been around for over 20 years. There are localization decisions that were taken over 20 years ago when, localization was not mature, of course, like in any startup. And those decisions, they're still there, and they're still lingering around, and they are still causing problems, but there is not much you can do unless you break all the testing of all your customers, right? You still need to deal. And again, it's a cloud solution that we're talking about, right? Customers share these solutions in same pods, right? And so that's another tricky part for a customer. Sometimes makes more sense to translate something in a different way than other customers. Fortunately, we have a feature, it's called Grammaticals, it's open source, where all the Salesforce objects can be renamed. So for example, the object account, if you are a health insurance company, you can rename it as patient, right? If it makes more sense. So, and that works in all the languages that we support. So imagine that string, that account string that needs to work in every possible string where it's in for Finnish, with all the, how many, 16, 17 cases, grammar cases that Finnish has. It's cool. It's really a cool feature. But yeah, there's a lot to do, a lot to think of. Did I answer your question, Dominique?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We'll come back on maintenance afterwards on the field. But I think let's focus on linguistic testing, Henk and Graham. So Henk, linguistic testing before shipping, in between the translations step and the shipment or the marketing side. So what's
So I see. So we see different things depending on customers. So some smaller companies, they don't even do the linguistic testing, and they fully rely on the translation agencies. Whereas larger organizations, they have a very quite a heavy process. How I see it is that also with the linguistic testing, like translation, it's also part of localization. So you should not interfere, or at a minimum, with the developers. So what is, I think, most efficient is when reviewers can do, in many cases, they are marketing people or so, or people who are in sales who do it in their spare time, to do some reviewing or so. The most ideal for them would be if they can open their browser and they can see the previews in their language. And if they see something which is wrong, that they can kind of annotate it. And then the translators immediately have access to that and can apply the correction. And we've measured that such processes can save up to 90% of developers' times. And it is much faster because you don't have all these intermediate steps, but it would be a rather technology conversation then, but it is possible.
Yeah, Graham, I guess we are dealing with many types of companies. So I guess very often when we're dealing with small companies, they don't have the in-country reviewers to review in target languages.
Absolutely not. No, they have a total reliance on the translators. Testing of the software can be done through multiple channels. There is a a lot of content being published on the web these days. So there are channels on the web that can be used to VPN in or give sandbox access to translators externally to test. Maybe more if there's an issue with security, we can also have virtual machines. We can set up virtual machines and labs internally or at the client's premises to again connect and test machines remotely, or test software remotely. But again, the navigation scripts, there is a reliance for agencies like WhP on the clients supplying certain access and information on how to navigate through the software as well. So it's key that when we're dealing with 30 languages, you can't just give access to 30 language variants in an ad hoc manner to 30 individual people and expect them to have the same user experience and navigate in the same manner, which is what is required in software testing.
Can I add something? Sometimes I notice that in-country review can backfire, right? Because you can get a lot of noise. Again, these in-country teams are product teams, they are marketing teams, they're not linguists. They don't know our terminology by heart, right? So in my experience, it's better to have the go-to team, the in-country teams review, for example, the glossary, the translated glossary, to make sure that, respect the terminology, but not every single word of a UI, because it creates a lot of noise, a lot of preferences. And, maybe you find an issue. Is it that worth it? All this back and forth, it takes time, it takes a lot of time.
Okay,
so more if it is the customer, by the way.
yeah.
So after you get the review, you still need to refilter afterwards what is usable for the translator, and well, in the product, they do not give you the choice. You need to put it anyhow. But
what do you mean in the product? They don't give you any choice?
For us, like as we do not sell our product. It's their product.
Oh.
So they want to change a string. We must. So it's no choice. But then of course we have the option when we sell this language again for another customer to not use the same. But it is a bit of a game.
Okay, just the last question, because we are getting close to the end. I'm just let's say eager to know whether you have statistics on how the software is used in different countries, whether used in different languages, if I actually use, because I guess they can select the languages. So do you have statistics on how the languages the customers are using languages? Peter, is it something you track or in the application or in
well, not anymore. I had those figures just recently, but currently, digital transformation changed all the way how we collect data, and I didn't get the access yet. But we had those figures before, and it's actually very much surprising the volume of let's say people. Once you translate the software, it is used by large majority translated. So our English is our base language and is actually also in our business. The business language is English, and still people would tend to use the translated language as soon as it is available.
Can you see that as well, Raffaella? People in local countries, they use because you are in CRM. Maybe many users can speak English. They still use it in local language. Yes. Mostly.
Well, again, it depends, right? You have certain countries, Japan, where everything needs to be localized, and then you have Northern Europe, where there is a lot of using English. And so I think that metrics are important so that they will guide you, they will guide us to know where to focus, right, our resources, because of course we cannot localize everything in every language. So knowing where there is a real need for localization helps us decide where to put our money. So of course we put more in Japan and maybe we use machine translation for all the help in Nordic languages, right? In Northern European languages. And so where we have many fewer users and again, machine translation post-edited by human beings. I'm not talking about raw machine translation. And it's an internal system customized with, at Salesforce. So, but yeah, metrics are very useful. We have those, we keep an eye, and they also help us build business case, right? In case we need to add a new language for a certain product. That's another thing where numbers help, because at the end of the day, you cannot make any requests without a solid, some proofs, some evidence that you need something, right?
Okay, so Henk and Graham, what do you see from your customers regarding the language usage? Do you believe there's any very strong rationale behind selecting one language or the other? Is it the statistics? Is it based on personal belief, or maybe some customers request?
Should I start?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of money involved with it. So I don't think it's somebody translates because they just want it, right? There is a rationale behind. And yesterday I had a conversation with a manager of a larger company, and he told me that that they actually collect numbers. They want a specific localization feature. And I was explaining him, okay, how much time it would take, to implement it for them. It's really specialistic. And I was kind of surprised, because he said, well, this estimation is completely fine, because if we, sell the product in all those countries, we have a simple rationale for it, because our sales will grow. They clearly have a competitive advantage. But I also work in industries where they, for example, create machines with user interfaces, and there it's more the goal that the operator knows how to operate the machine. So there the translation does not need to be that perfect and in so many languages, but it really, it really depends.
Yeah, there are legal and market requirements to be met. So it's some countries require that products being sold in that market must be accompanied and be translated into the local language. So that's a legal requirement, whereas I think localization can also be a means of generating revenue by localizing for other markets that may not have legal requirements, but have local users who are less familiar with speaking English or the language in which the software was developed. This localization is always a cheaper option than actually developing a product in a given language. So yes, I think economics determine what languages are actually requested by our clients.
Okay, so I think it's time to conclude. We are running out of time. I think we could have. I think it's a topic we could have, let's say, hours to cover. So I will just end up by asking you all a simple question. So what's on your plate, and what's your challenge for tomorrow? With tomorrow being, I would say, 2022, beyond getting back to the office, maybe because we might all be working from home. But beyond working back, coming back into the office, what's your main challenge? Is it technology? Is it time? Is it other languages? So Raffaella, what's on your plate?
All of that. It's all of that. But for us, at the moment, is growing our capability model through a modern and centralized localization infrastructure that will enable our team to support continuous localization and to focus more on higher value strategic work. As you know, we have a lot of legacy since the company's been around for over 20 years. And so this is one. Two is expand our Salesforce neural machine translation system that we developed in-house. Right now, we are localizing our help in 16 languages with this machine translation model, post-edited by our translators. I want to expand this model and experiment for knowledge articles, for example, that they have a short life shelf and they need to be constantly updated. And that's a thing where I want to go and started. And then again, shifting left our existing testing efforts, and do a little bit what Henk mentioned earlier. That's the nirvana, right? To see for the translator to see what they are translating while they are translating it, right? And not after, not during the in-context testing. And that's where we are going right now by building internal tools. That's what is our plate.
Peter, same questions on your plate.
Well, the usual top one and top two is still like awareness around the company is number one all the time, because things change, management changes, directions change, and they still need localization all the time. And doing the same thing again and again is not cost efficient. So let's do it once for good. And this needs awareness. The second is again always quality. How can we improve quality? But the real change, which is coming in the coming years, months, is more about the speed. The whole localization cycle in Amadeus needs to change from something which is more rhythmed by a development rhythm, agile or whatever. It speeds up to a point where we need to do continuously localization, and so continuously deploy new languages, continuously develop, continuously translate what has been developed, review, and all this needs to work in a flux, in a cycle. That's really challenging. Very interesting challenge, though.
Okay, Henk, is it the same? You see the customers asking for faster.
Yeah, everybody wants faster, and so
yesterday.
Yesterday, yes, and so my challenge is it's basically time and resources. That's my main challenge, because what we noticed is when you build solutions, when you try to support translators or encounter reviewers, with every feature you build, you get 10 new requests, right? So you really need to prioritize, but you always get new ideas, and I have tons of ideas. So we now need to see how to get those implemented without making my developers mad, right? So we need to really plan for that. Yeah.
How about you, Graham? What's your plate?
I always see the triangle: the quality, cost, and delay. I think everybody wants the same quality for the same cost or less in a quicker turnaround time. So technology always plays a part in speeding up the process, but what we have to ensure from a supplier point of view is maintaining the quality of what we deliver. So tools obviously play a key role in that. Terminology management, which is key to our quality process, is key to our success, as is the we're getting more and more requests to look at machine translation. I think machine translation, especially with neural translation coming of age now, with the quality coming from some of the engines is quite interesting for certain language pairs. And leveraging from our terminology expertise here at WhP, it is possible to tune even certain engines to give better quality translations that do approach human translation. Obviously, the human aspect will never be totally relegated to history, but we will always rely on human translators to post-edit machine translation. But I think in order to meet those cost and delivery time constraints, obviously volumes of source words are increasing, so we need to find technology to apply to our clients' requirements to achieve our goals and our clients' goals.
Okay, we are getting to the end, so I'm not supposed to I'm just supposed to interview you, but I just take this chance to mention as well that one of our challenges, let's say one of our services is also to help customers upstream organizing their workflow upstream so that the localization flows correctly in UI. So that's also something we see more and more. Amanda, do we have any questions for the audience? I'm sorry if I'm waking you up.
No, it's just my unmute reaction time. 1 second. Now we have more comments than questions, and one of the topics that keeps coming back in the comments that I'm reading about is how do you deal with the source version? The original version, and Kit and Jay Miles and I don't know who else have been talking about this. Matthias, yeah. Yes, how do you deal with the source language? Is it reviewed before going into the localization process?
Who wants to answer? Raffaella, Peter?
Yeah, I can start answering that. We cannot review everything. We're talking about thousands of new words per major release, right? So we review UI, the UI strings as much as possible. We fix those strings as much as possible. Again, we do a lot of education to prevent those issues. We also have an in-house team of writers, and each Scrum team is supposed to work with a writer. So it's not developers who write strings most of the times, but they are reviewed by writers, by Salesforce internal writers. And so that helps already, right, the quality of the UI strings. For help for documentation, I mean, we're talking really a volume that it's impossible to read. But again, we have a good system in place, as Dominique knows, for our content production. So it helps a lot, right? We have tools that make sure that strings are not too long, that writers use, and they're available, right, in the industry. And so that helps a lot to keep quality in the source. But it's not perfect. And again, the translators, nobody reads and analyzes the source as a translator. So of course they find something.
Yeah, I think it's a relevant comment, because it's the quality of translation relies a lot on the quality of a source, obviously. So Peter, is it something you have a review phase on the editing phase on the source content?
Well, it's more very similar. It's the UI strings are written by UX writers. They might still change a bit when they come to software development, but the main part, what is really important to have the UX writers in, is the coherence of the expressions. Like when you have well, as we were talking again about glossaries, but it's really, you have some terms which can be expressed very, very differently, like journey, travel, booking, reservation. There are a lot of things which actually mean very much the same thing, and you should be coherent. And this is really where the UX writers help the most. And to be syntactically correct, because sometimes you can get some funny typos when you have French people writing English, even with Indians. So.
Yeah. Do you see the same, Henk? Is it something that source string editing is something that you find it relevant in the process?
Yeah, it's extremely important. Also depends on the company, but usually the developers, they are from different region, and it's not that their English is not good enough, but sometimes they don't know the style or terminology, so it needs to be corrected by an author. So it's basically quite similar like a translation process. The difference is that after it has been corrected, well, some developers, they put it back into the source code, while others want to keep their own language. I always, kind of evangelize that the developers should use the correct terminology in their software, because it also helps them to write the next strings better, right? If they see good examples, it will help. So yeah, but you also need to have processes in place, and of course, after you've done a correction of the source, you also want to make sure that your translations are adapted if needed, right? So this whole source editing process can be quite a heavy process.
Okay, Graham.
Actually, may I add one thing, which is actually important? I'm not sure how many people are on software localization, but yet the developers will always use string concatenation. It's like, I don't know, it's like 15 years in the business, they still use it. And well, if you have a UX writer, he can actually avoid these things. He would see it quite at the beginning. And nowadays with Angular and some modern UIs frameworks, you have the dynamic strings with pluralization, and like they react or have some grammar in the software code. So when you have UX writers, then they can do it correctly. Developers can't. They just can't.
I agree with that. I think the framework, the formats for plurals and singular strings within the software string table is key to having a quality source translation. But at the same time, there's a reticence to make changes to source if you have a product that has been localized. It has legacy translations and been already localized into many languages. The cost implications can be quite dramatic.
What I like to show the writers is the tracking the cost for a string that is not consistent, right? Follow these steps, or use the following steps. That kind of string that they just need to get the reusable right in. And so then it's a repetition for our translation memory. If they provide 10 different versions of the same concept, well, I show them the final cost, multiplied by thousands of instances, multiplied by 34 languages. You see how much that costs, their lack of consistency.
So
I suggest my best success was showing the face of a customer who was actually complaining about bad translation. That worked awesome. Very well.
Even better. But when you bring out numbers and cost, that helps, right? To say, okay, and also work. I always we work with everybody, and above all with writers. They need to be our ears, localization ears in those team meetings. They need to behave, but this is not okay for localization. So there is a lot of training going on with the writers, because we have many more writers than localization people. We cannot attend, and every Scrum team has a master, has a writer, but not a localization program manager, right?
Correct. I think what we've all omitted here is the end user and the collecting of actual quality feedback from the end users using the final products, because this entire discussion has been based around internal processes and clients' internal processes. But key to the process is customer satisfaction. So a means of actually collecting data from the field and feeding that data back into the development team and the localization teams to satisfy the demands of the actual users of the software.
What I can see as a consultant, what I can see more and more is let's say I can see more and more UX designer involved, but brings the voice of the user in this, and even do mockups and customer focus upfront. And I think that's they bring the voice of a user before. So I think that's a great improvement for localization as well, because then it's consistent, as we all mentioned. You agree on that? You have, I think in both Amadeus and Salesforce, you've got UX designers working on all your products,
mm-hmm.
And that's something rather important. Any other questions, Amanda? On because I'm not checking I should, but I'm not checking the questions as they come.
I had received one question from Kelly directly to me. It was about, can you talk about systems you used to be more agile? So what we use on our side to be more agile is to try to move our processes, our localization processes, as upstream as possible, right? So that we have enough time to do things well and to do them in time. That's what we use, and also again, not everything needs to be localized immediately. Because yes, to continuous localization, but personally, to continuous localization with brain, right? It doesn't make sense to localize, to do continuous localization right at this moment. That's where we're gonna go. But again, still with the human being behind, saying, doesn't make sense to do it now. Doesn't make sense to go through the effort right now. So I don't know if this makes sense. Peter, what do you think? What do you do to be more agile?
What do we do to be more agile? Well, it's the being before, to be in as early as possible is very important. So to prevent things, and then afterwards be fast. It's all the time is the speed. So using translation, for example, smartly, because we know the quality impact, but it's fast. Then we are open to people to try things different, let them fail, and then provide them the good solution. And somehow this makes that people respect what we suggest them. Not sure whether this is what you want to know, Kote agile, but at least on our side, we are flexible and kind of bring an example to the development people so that they show also more flexibility when they are facing localization issues, whether it is time or quality.
One more thing is that for Salesforce, as I mentioned in our pre-panel, localization is part of the definition of ready, definition of done of the engineer teams, right? So that helps a lot to bring in localization and to make sure that they already comply with localization requirements in the job they are doing, right? Like running pseudo localization, for example. We have a script, they do that, they catch issues well upstream that we don't have to deal with. So that helps also to be more agile, to go faster.
And I think agility as well is fueled by system integration workflows. Because if you have too many manual tasks, and it's going to be error prone, and you're going to be losing time. So I think system integration, having efficient workflows, automated workflows, and system integration, so that you don't redo everything. You don't, let's say, you don't use Excel file to transfer content from one system to another one, which was the case up to 5-10 years ago. I think Excel was the most used format for source strings.
It's still used a lot.
Yeah.
What helps a lot nowadays is actually the speed of deployment. So when something goes wrong, the fix you provide can be deployed very quickly. This is something I see changing. But also on the other side is, of course, then the customers also want you that it's fixed the day before. So it's an advantage, but on the other side, people know it already.